Welcome to So Guided, a spiritual travel guide for the curious. Join Carissa and Jenny, ordinary people exploring all the extraordinary ways we can connect to the universe. Each week, they investigate another spiritual modality and adventure through all the wild ways we can find high vibes, hope, and ultimately, enlightenment.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of So Guided. Today we are talking about a word that kept coming up for Carissa, so we decided to investigate this new to us subject, Akashic Records. It is curious. You've got questions, so do we. Let's do this. So we're in a new space, and we're super excited too because we're about to dig into a topic I personally have only heard the word. I don't know what it means. I don't know anything. So this is literally me learning along with you guys. Chris is going to be our guide, although I'll say this, she didn't know much about it till she researched it. So we're all about to dig in. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Akashic Records today. It's really funny. I actually saw a meme, which I think you'll appreciate, and maybe you saw it. I don't know if I sent it to you, but it was like, dream job. The person on the podcast that listens to the person that researched everything and just says ooh and ah. So I think it's so funny because you think about this as like you're researching this stuff to try to find the information. I felt like that when I was doing this because there's so much information on the Akashic Records. I sourced all this information, so we'll put this on the site so you guys can check it out if you want to dig deeper. But what I wanted to do was just get an overview, understand what it is. If you guys listen to our Sign podcast, I talked about how Akashic Records just started coming up all the time for me. Like I had never heard of the word, and then all of a sudden I heard about it 10 times in a month. And so it was one of those things that I was like, all right, there's something here. I need to research it. Jenny doesn't know much about it either. So I dug in and, started with our friend Google and did a little search. And if you search the Akashic Records, there's over 5 million search results. Oh gosh.
So I did find a lot of cool information. And, first and foremost, what we have to start with is like, what are the Akashic Records? Like, what does it mean? And so the Akashic Records are believed to be the repository of every thought, word, and deed of every living being in all times, past, present, and future.
Okay.
So it is essentially a record of your soul through every past lifetime and the potential for any future lifetime. It's really just this like place that you can go and like understand and get information about your soul and your soul's journey and like what you need to know. I thought it was interesting because those who are familiar with this report, they say that there's no judgment or implied penalty in the records. So it's not about punishment. It's not about saying like you did something bad in the past. It's literally just like a learning tool, and it's like infinite. So it goes back infinitely and forward infinitely. And I'm making a big sweeping arm motion for those who can't see me, because it's really just this kind of all-knowing, and it's an opportunity for you to learn certain things by going there.
Pause.
Yes.
You keep saying going there. Where is there?
The Akashic Records are thought to exist in the ether. Okay. So this is a non-physical plane of existence, aka the mental plane. A lot of them say like, when you meditate, you can go to that other like mental plane. This is actually interesting where it says you don't even necessarily need to meditate to get there. You just need to be focused. And it's basically an energetic log. If we talk about Google searches before, essentially it's a Google search for your soul. Because like when you look for Google and you can't find, you don't really know how it's getting there. It's in the ether. Like it's the same thing with the Akashic Records.
Okay.
So you're going there, you're going to this like spot. And so you can essentially like read your own records or the records of someone else. So if you want to know like about a loved one. However, if you're looking at someone else's records, it's through the lens of your soul. So you'll never...
How it relates to you, so you're not spying.
Right, and you're not spying, and you're also not understanding like their soul's journey. You're seeing how their potential soul intertwines with your own. Everything is through the lens of your personal soul. Okay. So most people go there to learn about themselves and like their existence and what lessons they have to learn. But it's like, it's deeply private, it's deeply personal, and you can get a lot of information there depending on what your needs are in the moment. So in my search, one of the things that I thought was interesting is kind of the history of this. Do you have any questions on what it is so far?
I'm getting it. I think the spiritual Google search really cleared that for me. And then where it exists, I get the ethers.
Yeah, it's that mental plane that almost every search alluded to. So it's like this, it's not an alternative universe. It's like how it's kind of, I don't know, like I guess you go internally, you can kind of get to a higher level or a different state of being.
It's a library.
It's a library. And it's not like, it's not like necessarily from what I was reading. It's not like about being hypnotized to go there. It's not about that you necessarily have to meditate. It's more of like focusing and allowing yourself to open up the records and be present within the records.
Okay, so that leads to a bunch of questions I'm supposing are up next.
Yeah.
How the F do you get there? Can I just get someone to help me? Are two of my first questions.
So, yes, you can absolutely get someone to help you. And when you Google it, there's lots of people who will guide you on a guided journey to the Akashic Records. One of the most like common ways I found when I was looking to get to the Akashic Records is through an opening prayer. There is a woman who basically is an expert on the Akashic Records, and she has her name's Helen Woods, and she's actually referenced in many of these articles, and she wrote a prayer. It's called an opening prayer that opens up the Akashic Records. And so I can even read it to you. One of the things that, you do before you're going into the Akashic Records, just to find light. If you're in a bad space, it may not be the right time. It's not going to necessarily give you something negative. That's not what it is. But it is good to feel grounded. They say to meditate prior for maybe 5 minutes, take some deep breaths, connect with Archangel Michael, they say. If you like to call on angels, that's a good angel they say to call on if you're going to go to the Akashic Records. Some people pull an energy source where they envision themselves surrounded in white light prior to doing this. Again, just to kind of get in the zone, and like I said, prior to going into this. And then the opening prayer is this. And so we acknowledge the forces of light, asking for guidance, direction, and courage to know the truth as it is revealed for our highest good and the highest good of everyone connected to us. O Holy Spirit of God, protect me from all forms of self-centeredness and direct my attention to the work at hand. Help me to know my name, help me to know, Carissa, in the light of the Akashic Records, to see, again, your name, Carissa, through the eyes of the Lord of the Records, and enable me to share the wisdom and compassion that the masters, teachers, and loved ones of Carissa have for me. You repeat the second session 1 time out loud and twice silently to yourself. And you repeat your name once out loud and then twice silently again. And then you say the records are now open. And so then you're in the records. There are some steps that I found that they say follow if you're going to access the records for the first time. And some people say you're not going to necessarily be able to access them the first time. Just like when you meditate, some people go deep into meditation immediately. There are certain things that people can just do. So don't be discouraged if you're not there right away before you do the prayer. There is some we said the prep with the asking for removing any fears, any doubts, asking for Archangel Michael to join and to guide you. But you can also kind of decide what you want to know. So there's certain questions to kind of think to yourself before you enter. So you want to know, are you there to just browse? Are you just there to see what it is, to look at, a past life, to get an idea of your soul's journey? You may just want to be in there to confirm the existence of the Akashic Records. I just want to even see if this is something I believe in.
This might not be an answer you have, but is it something where people can actually see it visually in their mind's eye?
So common ways that people tend to see it or feel it is vision. So they see it. Other people report after doing it and being in there having dreams that later on that actually feel like they've visualize it. You can see colors. So sometimes just literally if you ask the Akashic Records and you're there and you just see a certain color, that could actually be the Akashic Records. People report, feeling or sensing temperature, feeling or sensing a guide or presence. So much like everything we talk about, it's very individualized to the person.
And so sense related. So probably yet again, it relates to your sense where you pick up intuition most.
100%. How your 5 senses are so acutely yours and how you may feel things or get a gut feeling. It's another thing, you get a gut feeling that you just know you're there. Those are all reported common ways The thing about it is, like, when they say, like, when you're in there, it's just be open. You don't have to have a very rigid way of thinking, like, someone's going to talk to you and you're going to see a book and it's going to open to a page. Like, that's not necessarily what it is. It's really more about, like, hey, like, what is your soul sharing with you at that moment? The way to kind of, be open to this is to be prepared and kind of have some of those questions, like 5 or 6 questions to kind of think about prior to entering. So again, deciding if you're browsing, deciding, like, do I want to confirm the existence, or just, like, how deep into the Akashic Records do you want to go. The second way is to really decide, do you have a specific question? So it says, like, try spending time clarifying intentions, maybe perhaps writing or understanding that there are no wrong answers or intentions. So writing and journaling prior to, like, what, you might want to understand or get. And again, as you're writing and putting down these things, one of the, like, kind of the themes I was getting is not to be looking for a very specific outcome, but just journaling kind of feelings that are coming up and, like, your intentions of, like high level of what you'd like to understand.
This is truly, like, bird's eye view soul stuff versus, should I take this job? We could go use a pendulum or tarot cards, or would you do a small ask? You can.
That's one of the things I was saying. Like, people use the Akashic Records like they use a pendulum. And that's just it. They use it, or they use it as a high-level soul understanding. As I was, like, reading about this stuff, I was like, oh, like, some people get super deep into this, and it's, like, their go-to. It's their tarot cards. It's their thing. It was interesting because one of, like, the articles I found was like, well, what happens if it doesn't work for you? Like, why doesn't it work for some people?
Good question.
And the first answer was, maybe it's not your thing. There are things that, like, you are so drawn to, and I feel like you and I in this journey have especially noticed this, that there are certain things that you've gone deep into that I'm like, oh, that's interesting, but not my thing, and vice versa. As you're going through kind of, like, how to prep, like, sometimes it is, get a very specific question. Again, and, like, the answer may come in a way that is crystal clear, or it may come in a different way where it's like, you may think you need that question, but the soul is not answering it for you at that time, or it's not necessarily giving you what you want. So you just have to be, again, have flexible expectations, I guess is kind of...
I think that sounds particularly pertinent to this subject, but also, is this not one of our repeat themes on everything we approach?
Yes.
You can't be attached to an outcome. You kind of surrender.
Yes.
There's an intent for subject line, and then you release.
Yes.
And this seems like that as well.
100%.
Get clear on intentions, and then release.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So, again, you can ask a specific question, but you may not always get the answer. Sometimes you will. After you're, like, as you're prepping, when you're ready, clearly state your intention and request that any guides, whether you know them or not, assist you. The energy of your guides are around you, helping you during this mission, if you will. Use whatever meditation practice you prefer to enter a relaxed, open state. Obviously, you're a huge meditator. Another thing that you can do, again, is, like, journaling prior, drawing gets people into a relaxed state, taking a walk in nature, sometimes just, like, putting your hands in the dirt, and they say, like, gardening and things like that are another way to kind of, prior to something like this, is to feel connected and grounded. Grounding is a really important part of this, where as much as you're going to a different plane and a different state, actually feeling very footed on earth and in your body help your mind get to that altered state. So different things that you can do prior, again, whether it's, again, you would meditate. I'm not sure. I might take a walk in nature. I'm not, so there's different things to be open and receptive. And remember, it can come, the messages can come visually, they can come auditory. Some people hear things in their mind. It can come in the form of a guide, an angel. One thing that it doesn't come as is anxiety or negativity. It is a gentle voice and it's a gentle message. So if you're getting something that just doesn't feel good or has, like, again, that's, like, your own anxiety or
that's your ego.
That's your ego. So just be aware of that, and that's something where maybe take a step back. Like, you're not in the flow. That's not what the Akashic Records are. They are a good place. They're a good energy. So as you're in there, if you do see a guide, you connect with another being or someone's there, ask their name. Don't be afraid to, in your mind's eye, to speak to these guides. Ask the records, to clarify a question. Like, once you're in there, you can feel free to kind of let loose, you know, like you
Okay.
can ask, like there's no rules here. Again, like really the only rule is it's going to feel right. It's not going to be a bad feeling. If
I like
you
that.
know. So in the end, end your session after you feel like, once you're in there and you feel like you've gotten, information, and then like record your experience. Like we talk a lot about like journaling and doing like, writing about our dreams, but these things are like, when you're in there and you get these messages, like sometimes they might not even make sense. So if you journal them, like the universe could be trying to tell you something. If you were to go back to it, it may make more sense later. So
I'd also say whenever we explore these things, you think you're going to remember the details and you don't. So just write them down. They're fun to circle back to.
yes. And it for a lot of people, it takes more than one attempt to tune in and to be able to get there. So even if you believe nothing happened, like you're in there like, okay, that was like, a dud or whatever, like just write down, I felt cold. I was thinking about, my errands or the things I have to do. And like, sometimes the hindsight may reveal more than what you expected. So if you were to go back to that again, as you're open, it could be giving you more information than you typically thought.
Such good advice. And I'd say too, one of our things we always say is that stupid self-doubt where you did it happen? Did it not? Well, if we're exploring this and you took the time to sit down, why don't you just accept in that moment, play with the universe back and say, I believe it.
100%.
It wasn't in my head.
100%.
I think every time I do something like this, I think I'm nuts and I made it up in my head. And of course that like other side of me wants to be like, we believe this. And it's like the angel and the devil.
Yeah.
And the devil's like, oh, you're literally losing your mind.
Or you just feel like you're like making it up. But that's exactly the opposite. Like it's super interesting. So you go back in like the history of this, and it goes back. The first time that Akashic Records were actually recorded was like the late 1800s, and so like that was like the first time someone like put a name to it and like spoke about it. And this was this Helena woman, and it's around this theosophical movement in the late 19th century. And so basically this whole like purpose and how this came about is there is no religion higher than truth. And so this woman wrote about this and wrote about like how there's this truth and there's this like basically records of everything that has been truth. And what's so interesting is like, okay, that's 1800s. That's not really that long ago.
No.
But when you peel back the layers, it actually goes back like this whole like this theosophical movement, and like this woman was kind of predicated on the Tibetan monks, which goes back thousands of years. And Akasha actually comes from the Sanskrit word of astral light.
Ooh.
And so it like taps into this belief system. And so if you go and like, so it's actually thousands of years. It just took a little while to put a name to it where they can find a recorded name. But these Akashic records have been around for monks. And then what's also really cool in how they speak about there's no religion higher than the truth. There's also record of the Akashic records, or an alluding to the Akashic record in the Bible, where it talks about basically that that heaven has a record of everything that's ever happened in all lives.
Oh, that gave me
and
the
that was in the
goosebumps.
Bible. So it's really, again, this is something that it seems like 1800s, not too long ago in the scheme of things. Like there was like a name put to this, but it actually is something that spans thousands and thousands of years, which is like most of the things we talk about. It's like you don't realize how far back they go and how they cross so many religions and belief systems.
That's what I thought about that last statement, is you just crossed over multiple religions in that, and it's almost like sometimes I wonder if someone's done this. You do a study of all the same theories that exist in every one, and that's your truth layer. But that's amazing. I love it.
I don't know. I thought that was like very interesting. And one of the other things that I found in the research is that the Akashic Records is a well-staffed library, which means that there are so many forms, so much support there to help you access it. Whether it be angels, whether it be guides, whether it be energy, whether it be your dreams, whether it be your feeling, whether it be your senses. There's a lot of ways that any individual can access it. Like if angels talk to you, but I don't have that same approach, like I can still get the information how I get it. Maybe I get it in a vision. Some people report seeing movies of their past lives playing when they're in the library.
Oh, they're
lucky.
lucky.
So there's just so many reports of people like going through this and understanding it, and it becomes obvious that everyone has an experience that is unique to them. And so I like that there's like, again, and I think it goes back to the history of this and how it's touched upon in multiple religions and multiple theological like theories. And I just think it's cool that you don't have to be intimidated. Random objects can sometimes symbolize something larger.
Okay.
And then here's a couple like kind of fun facts that I found in my readings that I thought were good to know. There's no thinking; the information will just come. So I feel like that's another thing that we talk about, like with the ego. If like you're kind of like directing it or you're thinking too hard, that's not the message.
So would you tell somebody to not do it that time, or let go of the session, or clear further and push forward if that's happening?
I guess it depends. I would just think that it's good to be aware of it. And so you know that if you're trying to force a message.
If you're trying, it's not right.
Like I talked, you and I have talked about this. I tried this once. Like I tried doing the Akashic Records once, and I basically fell asleep during it. And then when I woke up, all I heard was "stay soft." Remember I told you that? Like, so the message I woke up to when the recording was like, okay, open your eyes, come out of the Akashic Records, I heard this voice say, "stay soft." And I'm not super soft. Like, so it's like a funny message. And so it seemed like it was a different voice. It was just nothing I've ever said to myself, thought about. It's not like a mantra I use. And so to me, it was like the only thing I took from the session, and it just it's resonated with me because it was such a different voice. It wasn't like something I'd tell myself.
No, that's a good cue.
Yeah, it's a good
when
cue.
it's not your vocabulary,
right? When it's not
your typical demeanor.
Exactly. And I think at the moment, it's like there are certain, when I looked at like the situations that were happening when that message came to me, it was something that was telling me to like the things that I'm going through, like to stay soft, like don't let it harden you, don't get, because I could go very like, when you have a hard time, you can go defensive, you can go different ways. So it was like it seemed like really sage wisdom
I
got it. And I thought about it. And I did write it down. I wrote it on a Post-it note, put it in my little office area. So you don't need to be a psychic. Anyone can do it. So that's another thing. Like you can have someone guide you. You can listen to a guided meditation. There's a million of them out there. Or you can just do it yourself. And this is not something where you need to be special or different in order to access. These are open. The records are open to everybody. Develop your trust muscle. Let go of fear and judgment. So you got to go in with an open mind. Any small, insignificant thing you receive is a message. Trust it. It shows you all of your past lives, your soul, and your future soul, but your future soul is ever changing because of decisions and things that you make, because there is free will. Right. And so like it shows potential of the future, and like you may have certain things that are going to be on your path and people that you're going to see in your path regardless, but things can change. And so there's never a hard fast you must or do this or must do that. It's a supportive energy kind of giving you what's best. And that's why you're asking, in the opening prayer, like what is best for the greatest good for myself and others. And similarly, there's no fate or destiny in the records, as life is a result of multiple constantly shifting contingencies and synergies. So life is more complex than that, and I'm reading that because I like the way that that's kind of framed. There's no certainty in the outer world, so again, like it's not overly rigid, but it is a good place to get clear advice that, again, like kind of like what I got, like to stay soft. That's the one thing I felt like that. I felt like that was like a real, and after doing the research, that seems like that could have been a real, to me. Could have been a real like thing that happened. And then, so after you're in there, there is you want to get out, there is a closing prayer. So I'll read the closing prayer for you just so you can have it. And again, like we'll post all this so you guys can like grab it. Closing prayer, I would like to thank the masters, teachers, and loved ones for their love and compassion. I would like to thank the Lord of the Akashic Records for their point of view. And I would like to thank the Holy Spirit of Light for knowledge and healing. The records are now closed. Amen. The records are now closed. Amen. The records are now closed. Amen. So what I would say to you, Jenny, is like, you've been curious about it. I would love for you to kind of try it. And then, we'll circle back on a follow-up and do a quick follow-up episode. I'd love to hear, like, if you got any messages, what your experience was.
Well, as you were talking, I thought, well, I know what I'm doing this weekend. I 100% am going to try it.
Thank you for listening. We've loved being your spiritual travel guides and hope this made you feel more connected. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast player. Your reviews help us create the guide that you are looking for. We'd also love to hear your stories.
You could follow and share your experiences with us on Instagram at So Guided Podcast. Your story might just be our next weekly woo-woo. Join us again next week as we continue to dig deeper into the universe. And remember, stay curious. Ask the questions. You are so guided.